All right. Okay, it is recording. Hi, everyone. This is my second video. I'm reading the seventh part of The Color of Magic. Okay, so let's find out what's under the altar. This time something struck Rinsman's hand heavily. He clawed at the air and looked at the thing he'd caught. It was a piece of stone with 5 + 3 sides. I've I don't know if I've mentioned this in one of the Discworld videos if you don't watch my other ones, but I'm always about a sentence ahead of where I'm reading. That's how my brain works. I have to read ahead in order to process. It's just I don't know. I don't know if other people do it. I've never talked to people about reading loud. I was not a sentence ahead. My brain saw 5 + 3 and I was like, what the hell is that? What is that word? What is that? Oh, I get it. He looked up at the ceiling. Should it be sagging like that? Hrun hummed a little tune as he began to pull crumbling leather from the desecrated altar. Oh boy. The air crackled. Florest hummed. Intangible winds gripped the wizard's robe, flapping it out in eddies of blue and green sparks. Around Winsman's head, mad, half-formed spirits howled and gibbered as they were sucked past. He tried raising a hand. He was immediately surrounded by a glowing octarine corona as the rising magical wind roared past. The gale raced through the room without stirring one iota of dust, yet it was blowing Rinsman's eyelids inside out. It screamed along the tunnels, its banshee wail bouncing madly from stone to stone. Two Flowers staggered up, bent double in the teeth of the astral gale. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. Rincewind half turned. Immediately the howling wind caught him, nearly pitching him over. Poltergeist eddies, spitting in the rushing air, snatched at his feet. Hrun's arm shot out and caught him. A moment later he and Two Flower had been dragged into the lee of the ravaged altar and lay panting on the floor. Beside them the talking sword Kring sparkled, its magical field boosted 100-fold by the storm. "Hold on!" screamed Rincewind. "The wind!" shouted Two Flower. "Where's it coming from? Where's it blowing to?" He looked into Rincewind's mask of sheer terror, which made him redouble his own grip on the stones. "We're doomed," murmured Rincewind, while overhead the roof cracked and shifted. "Where do shadows come from? That's where the wind is blowing." What was in fact happening, as the wizard knew, was that as the abused spirit of Baal Shamaroth sank through the deeper chthonic planes, his brooding spirit was being sucked out of the very stones into the region which, according to the Discworld's most reliable priest, was both under the ground and somewhere else. In consequence, his temple was being abandoned to the ravages of time, who for thousands of shamefaced years had been reluctant to go near the place. Now, the suddenly released accumulated weight of all those pent-up seconds was bearing down heavily on the unbraced stones. Ron glanced up at the widening cracks inside. Then he put 2 fingers into his mouth and whistled. Why? Strangely, the real sound rang out loudly over the pseudo-sound of the widening astral whirlpool that was forming in the middle of the great octagonal slab. It was followed by a hollow echo which sounded, he fancied, strangely like the bouncing of strange bones. Then came a noise with no hint of strangeness. It was hollow hoofbeats. Hrun's warhorse cantered through a creaking archway and reared up by its master, its mane streaming in the gale. The barbarian pulled himself to his feet and slung his treasure bags into a sack that hung from the saddle, then hauled himself onto the beast's back. He reached down and grabbed Two Flower by the scruff of his neck, dragging him across the saddle tree. As the horse turned around, Rincewind took a desperate leap and landed behind Hrun, who raised no objection. The horse pounded, sure-footed along the tunnels, leaping sudden slides of rubble and adroitly sidestepping huge stones as they thundered down from the straining roof. Rincewind, clinging on grimly, looked behind him. No wonder the horse was moving so swiftly. Close behind, speeding through the flickering violet light, were a large, ominous-looking chest and a picture box that skittered along dangerously on its 3 legs. So great was the ability of sapient Parawood to follow its master anywhere, the grave goods of dead emperors had traditionally been made of it. It reached the outer air a moment before the octagonal arch finally broke and smashed into the flags. The sun was rising. Behind them a column of dust rose as the temple collapsed in on itself, but they did not look back. That was a shame, because Two Flower might have been able to obtain pictures unusual even by Discworld standards. There was... I'm fine. There was a movement in the smoking ruins. There seemed to be a growing green... What? They seemed to be growing a green carpet. Then an oak tree spiraled up, branching out like an exploding green rocket, and was in the middle of a venerable copse even before the tips of its aged branches had stopped quivering. A beech burst out like a fungus, matured, rotted, and fell in a cloud of tinder dust amid its struggling offspring. Already the temple was a half-buried heap of mossy stones. Oh, God, that's time unfolding. All the time that stopped, essentially, Oh, that's kind of cool. But time, having initially gone for the throat, was now setting out to complete the job. The boiling interface between decaying magic and ascended entropy roared down the hill and overtook the galloping horse, whose riders, being themselves creatures of time, completely failed to notice it. But it lashed into the enchanted forest with the whip of centuries. Impressive, isn't it? Observed a voice by Rincewind's knee as the horse cantered through the haze of decaying timber and falling leaves. The voice had an eerie metallic ring to it. Rincewind looked down at Kring, the sword. It had a couple of rubies set in the pommel. He got the impression they were watching him. What? From the moorland rimward of the wood, they watched the battle between the trees and time, which could only have one ending. It was a sort of cabaret to the main business of the halt, which was the consumption of quite a lot of bear, which had I'm sorry. Wait, no, that's what it says. It was a sort of cabaret to the main business of the halt, which was the consumption of quite a lot of a bear, which had incautiously come within bowshot of Hrun. Rincewind watched Hrun over the top of his slab of greasy meat. Hrun going about the business of being a hero, he realized, was quite different to the wine-bibbing, carousing Hrun who occasionally came to Ankh-Morpork. He was cautious, lithe as a panther, and thoroughly at home. And I've survived Bel Shamaroth, Rincewind reminded himself. Fantastic. Twoflower was helping the hero sort through the treasure stolen from the temple. It's mostly silver set with unpleasant purple stones, representation of spiders, octopi, and the tree-dwelling Octosir of the Hubland Waste figured largely in the heap. Those are all things with 8 appendages, I noticed. Rincewind tried to shut his ears to the grating voice beside him. It was no use. And then I belonged to the Pasha of Redorad and played a prominent part in the Battle of the Great Neff, which is where I received the slight nick you may have noticed some 2/3 of the way up my blade, Kring was saying, from its temporary home in a tussock. Some infidel was wearing an octiron collar, most unsporting. And of course I was a lot sharper in those days. My master used to use me to cut silk handkerchiefs in midair, and... Am I boring you? Huh? Oh, no, not at all. It's all very interesting, said Rincewind, with his eyes still on Hrun. How trustworthy would he be? Here they were, out in the wilds. There were trolls about. I could see you were a cultured person, Kring went on. So seldom do I get to meet really interesting people, for any length of time, anyway. What I'd really like is a nice mantelpiece to hang over, somewhere nice and quiet. I spent a couple of 100 years on the bottom of a lake once. Did you find the ring there, too? I wonder if the ring from Lord of the Rings and Kring the Sword are like friends in another universe, or this universe. That must have been really fun, said Rincewind absently. Not really, said Kring. No, I suppose not. What I really like to be is a plowshare. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like an existence with some point to it. Why am I thinking about this? Twoflower hurried over to the wizard. I had a great idea, he burbled. Yeah, said Rincewind wearily. Why don't we get Hrun to accompany us to Quorum? Twoflower looked amazed. How did you know? He said. I just thought you'd think it, said Rincewind. Hrun ceased stuffing silverware into his saddlebags and grinned encouragingly at them. Then his eyes strayed back to the luggage. If we had him with us, who'd attack us? Said Twoflower. Rincewind scratched his chin. Hrun, he suggested. But we saved his life in the temple. Well, if by attack you mean kill, said Rincewind, I don't think he'd do that. He's not that sort. He'd just rob us and tie us up and leave us for the wolves, I expect. Oh, come on. Look, this is real life, snapped Rincewind. I mean, here you are carrying on a box full of gold. Don't you think anyone in their right minds would jump at the chance of pinching it? I would, he added mentally, if I hadn't seen what the luggage does to prying fingers. Then the answer hit him. He looked from Hrun to the picture box. The picture imp was doing its I can't do this. It was doing its laundry in a tiny tub while the salamanders dozed in their cage. Laundry? What kind of clothes does it wear? How does it get dirty? Does it have body odor? Why am I asking these questions? Because this is what Terry Pratchett intended. He wanted to ruin my brain. I've got an idea, he said. I mean, what is it heroes really want? Gold? Said Twoflower. No, I mean, really want. Twoflower frowned. I don't quite understand, he said. Rincewind picked up the picture box. Hrun, he said. Come over here, will you? Notoriety? They want to be famous forever? They want to be known forever? The days passed peacefully. True, a small band of bridge trolls tried to ambush them on one occasion, and a party of brigands nearly caught them unawares one night, but unwisely tried to investigate the luggage before slaughtering the sleepers. Whoops. Hrun demanded and got double pay for both occasions. If any harm comes to us, said Rincewind, then there will be no one to operate the magic box. No more pictures of Hrun, you understand? Hrun nodded, his eyes fixed on the latest picture. It showed Hrun striking a heroic pose, with one foot on a heap of slain trolls. Oh my god. It's like you're their publicist or their PR person. Me and you and a little friend Two Flowers, we all get on okay, he said. Oh, so tomorrow maybe we get a better profile, okay? He carefully wrapped the picture in troll skin and stowed it in his saddlebag along with the others. It seems to be working, said Two Flower, admiringly as Hrun rode ahead to scout the road. Sure, said Rincewind. What heroes like best is themselves. You're getting quite good at using the picture box, you know that? Yeah. So, you might like to have this. Two Flower held out a picture. What is it? Asked Rincewind. Oh, just the picture you took in the temple. Oh, no. I don't want to know. Rincewind looked in horror. There, bordered by a few glimpses of tentacle, was a huge, whorled, calloused, potion-stained, and unfocused thumb. That's the story of my life, he said wearily. You win, said Fate, pushing the heap of souls across the table. The assembled gods relaxed. There will be other games, he added. The lady smiled into two eyes that were like the holes in the universe. And then there was nothing but the ruin of the forest and a cloud of dust on the horizon, which drifted away on the breeze, and, sitting on a pitted and moss-grown milestone, a black and raggedy figure. His was the air of one who was unjustly put upon, who was dreaded and feared, yet who is the only friend of the poor and the best doctor for the mortally wounded. Death, although of course completely eyeless, watched Rincewind disappearing with what would, had his face possessed any mobility at all, have been a frown. Death, although exceptionally busy at all times, decided that he now had a hobby. There was something about that wizard that irked him beyond measure. He didn't keep appointments for one thing. I'll get you yet, Collie, said Death, in the voice like the slamming of leaden coffin lids. See if I don't. My God. This is incredible. This is incredible. This is amazing.